Iran just called out Washington in the most cutting way it could think of, not as an enemy, but as an addict. It started with the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent boasting that sanctions were suffocating Iran's economy. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson, Esmaeil Baqaei, wasn't going to let that line go unanswered. He fired back on social media, calling the comment less a policy win and more a confession. His argument, whenever Washington can't make diplomacy work, it falls back on sanctions. And when those sanctions don't work either, the US doesn't rethink the approach, it just doubles down. Baqaei didn't hold back on the framing. He said this isn't policy anymore, it's habit. And more than that, he called it an addiction that's replaced actual strategic thinking. He added that Iran has weathered this approach for decades and won't be pressured by what he called exhausted tactics. Then came the sharper jab. Baqaei suggested it's American officials, not Iran, who are boxing themselves in, clinging to a failing habit instead of taking what could be a less humiliating way out of a crisis Washington created for itself. This isn't new rhetoric either. Iranian officials have used almost this exact addiction framing before, years ago under a different foreign minister, making nearly the same argument about US sanctions policy. Which raises the real question here. Is this really about Bessent's comment? Or is Iran using it as an opening to reset the narrative around ongoing sanctions and diplomacy? Because this exchange isn't happening in a vacuum. It comes as the US continues leaning on unilateral sanctions, even after previous rounds failed to produce the political concessions Washington wanted from Tehran. So while the insults fly on social media, the actual sanctions stay firmly in place. And so does the standoff underneath them. Words won't move this needle. The real test is still what happens at the negotiating table, if either side is even willing to sit down at one.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to Mirror Now. If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to Mirror Now.